The candle flickers, not because there's a draft. You've stuffed wool in every possible crack in this wooden wall, but because the wax is cheap. You blink slowly in the amber light. The year is 1347. The village is frankly unimportant. Small, damp, and shaped like a horseshoe. You'll never find it on a map, which is fortunate, because you can't read one anyway. Your name is Marjorie, or perhaps Alice, or just Wench. If you're unlucky in Manand in this century, you usually are. The fire has long gone out in the hearth. Your father was too stingy with the kindling again. Outside, the night wraps the village like a damp woolen blanket. You hear the soft clop of hooves, someone's mule being dragged home late. Maybe a midwife, maybe a drunk. It's hard to say. In this fog, tonight is not just any night. It's your wedding night. You are 15, or maybe 14 and a half. And your mother's hands trembled slightly this morning when she tied the red ribbon in your braid. Not that she said anything about what would happen tonight. No one did. They just looked at you a bit too long and pressed stale oatcakes into your hand like tokens of quiet solidarity. You hear a snore from the other corner of the room. That would be your husband, a blacksmith's apprentice. His name is Walter, which is only slightly less terrifying than what's about to happen. The candle gutters again. You stare at the ceiling beams and the mold stains that resemble saints if you squint. You pray to Saint Agnes, or maybe Saint Bridget. Someone feminine, surely. You hope the saints are on duty tonight. One historical fact: most medieval marriages were arranged for economic reasons, often when the bride was still a child. Romantic notions came centuries later, like indoor plumbing and basic human rights. Your father agreed to the marriage over a mug of weak ale and 2 halves of a wheel of cheese. A modest dowry, but Walter's family needed help at the forge. And you're sturdy. That was the word they used, sturdy, like a cart horse. Here's your cheeky warning. You probably won't make it through this day, but hey, you've got me to guide you. And in the meantime, there's something oddly comforting about the consistency of medieval discomfort. Before we go further, if this slow stumble through history helps you rest, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It tells the algorithm we're doing something right. And if you're watching from somewhere far-flung, your location and local time in the comments. We'd love to know where and when we're lulling you to sleep. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You rise before dawn. The sky outside is less sky and more damp wool. Cold seeps into your feet through the floorboards, which are more dirt than wood anyway. Your husband is already gone. Thank God for apprenticeships. He left behind a smell somewhere between sheep sweat and boiled leeks. You poke at the ashes, add a few twigs, and manage a weak flame. Your fingers are stiff. With sleep, breakfast is barley porridge, with a chunk of yesterday's bread, hard as brick and twice as heavy. You chew slowly, staring into the fire like it owes you answers. Your new mother-in-law enters without knocking. She smells of onions and judgment. Her eyes take you in. Her silence says, "Well, still here." She hands you a bucket and points. To the door, you step into the village road. Mud sucks at your shoes. A chicken eyes you like it knows your secrets. You pass the neighbors' thatch-roofed cottages, each one stooping a little under centuries of weather. And then there's the church, towering, crooked, and somehow always damp, even when it doesn't rain. The bell tolls not for mass, but because old Thomlin has died again. That's what they say when someone collapses in the pigsty. It's the third time this year. They just keep digging new plots and hoping for the best. You nod to the priest as you pass. He nods back, vaguely suspicious of your reproductive potential. He's already calculated how many tithes your womb is worth. Obscure tidbit. In some medieval European communities, brides were expected to wear yellow ribbons on their wedding night to symbolize submission, but no one's really sure if this was symbolic or just sartorial peer pressure. A cart rolls by, its axle groaning like it resents being alive. The wheel nearly clips your ankle. No apology. The driver spits. You keep walking. You reach the well, lower the bucket. The rope scratches. Your palms. You wait. You think. You listen to the quiet. No birds. Just wind. Scholarly uncertainty moment. Historians still debate whether medieval women truly understood what their wedding night would involve, or if they were purposefully kept naive. Either way, the result was mostly the same: confusion, silence, and a strong desire for separate bedchambers. You return home with the water sloshing, your skirts damp at the hem. Walter's mother gives you a nod. You're accepted. For now. The rest of the day is scrubbing, stitching, and pretending not to exist. A cat wanders through the open door. You don't own it. No one does. It just knows this is a house that sometimes has crumbs. Night falls again. You light the candle, and tomorrow you'll do it all again with slightly more back pain and slightly fewer illusions. Asterisk, the rooster crows, but he's always early, possibly broken. No one listens to him anymore except the neighbor's baby, who takes it as a personal alarm clock and responds by howling. You're already awake, lying stiff on the straw-stuffed mattress like a log that's seen too much. You can smell the faint iron temps of the forge drifting in from the street. Walter is gone again. It's barely light. Today is market day. You slip into your only other dress. It smells of smoke and last month's stew. You hitch your apron high, braid your hair, and tuck in the strands that make you look too young. People take you more seriously if you look tired. Out on the road, carts clatter by in slow peri chickens, onions, turnips, and people who resemble all three. You hear someone trying to sell miracle vinegar, which promises to cure gout, broken teeth, and, for some reason, heartbreak. You pass the tavern. A man is asleep in the doorway with a half-eaten pie resting on his stomach. No one moves him. The town has accepted that some people just belong to the furniture at the market square. Stalls lean into one another like old friends trying to stay upright. Flies hover over everything. The fishmonger winks at you. He's missing several teeth and possibly some moral code. You're here to buy salt and vinegar and possibly sell a few woolen mitts you stitched last night by firelight. If you can find the glove merchant, and if he hasn't passed out again. Major. Historical fact. Salt was a valuable commodity in medieval Europe, not just for flavoring food, but for preserving meat essential in an age without refrigeration. Some towns even used it as currency. You haggle quietly with a woman who looks like she was carved from old bark. She offers you half a loaf for your gloves. You accept. The bread is freshish. You pass a puppet show near the fountain. Two figures, made of cloth, argue in squeaky falsettos. The plot is unclear. Someone else is probably the pig. Someone else is probably the pig butt. The children laugh. You smile, despite yourself. A boy with no shoes tries to steal an apple from the barrel. He's caught. The vendor chases him with a spoon. Justice is swift and extremely domestic. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some medieval markets required vendors to yell specific rhyming phrases to attract buyers. These jingles could get quite long and often included exaggerated claims like, "My radishes cure melancholy." You head back home, your arms are full. A turnip has rolled out of your basket and now follows you like a guilty dog. You let it at home. The blacksmith is hammering something large and probably unnecessary. Walter is red-faced, covered in soot, and smiling for no reason. He nods at you, then returns to his work. You heat some water, soak your feet. Your back aches from standing. The bread tastes better than expected. The salt does its job. You sit by the hearth. A small ember glows defiantly in the ash. You stare at it. It stares back. Scholarly uncertainty alert. Some argue that market day was a reprieve. For medieval women, a chance to socialize and trade. Others suggest it was just another obligation, more public, more exhausting, and just as unpaid. The candle burns low again. Outside, the night tucks in around the village. A dog barks once, then gives up. A breeze carries the scent of rosemary and sheep. You lean your head against the wall. Sleep pulls at your shoulders, and tomorrow it will be laundry day. But for now, the candle glows softly. Let it. You're crouched by the river now, not out of choice. It's laundry day, and in the grand tradition of women's work, that means you're knee-deep in cold water, scrubbing other people's stains with lye soap that stings your fingers. The river is barely awake. Mist clings to its surface like gossip at a feast, thin, persistent, and always floating around something better left unspoken. Your knuckles are red. Your dress is soaked up to your thighs, and your back feels like it's been personally insulted by the gods of posture. You scrub anyway. There's a shirt in your basket, stiff with whatever Walter did to it last week. You try not to speculate. Beside you, other women kneel in the mud, chatting, scrubbing, pausing to rub their arms. The chatter is slow, deliberate, mostly complaints, sometimes a hymn, occasionally rumors about the new reeve and whether his nose is real. You're not sure, and you're not asking. A woman to your left mutters about her husband's mysterious rash. Another shares that she saw a dog with two tails, which may or may not be an omen. No one questions it. This is a time when most problems are either divine punishment or unsalted meat. One major historical fact: medieval laundry was largely a communal task performed in rivers, with soap made from ashes and animal fat. It was labor-intensive, often painful, and rarely voluntary. The sunlight finally breaks through, dappling the surface of the water with sleepy gold. Your wrists ache. You swap out a shirt for a tunic. The tunic is no better. It's been patched. So many times it's more patch than original cloth. It sighs when it hits the water. You sigh too. Then comes the obscure bit. Some medieval women believed that wearing rosemary tucked into their aprons while washing would ward off joint pain and bad spirits. Naturally, you have rosemary tucked into your apron. Your joints still ache, but you like the smell. Someone lets out a quiet yelp leeches. You check your ankles, still clear for now. Behind you, a boy tosses stones at a tree and yells something unintelligible. No one stops him. Energy must go somewhere. The wind shifts. You smell something cooking in the village lentils. Maybe, or cabbage left a little too long in the pot. It smells better than it will taste. You finish your last garment and wring it out. Your arms tremble slightly. The sun has climbed higher, but not high enough to dry anything yet. You hoist the basket and begin the slow walk back uphill. You pass the baker's house, and a curl of warm bread air drapes over you like a hallucination. He's already sold out. You think dark thoughts about this dot, your skirts dripped steadily. The mud welcomes you like an old friend. Scholarly uncertainty of the day. It's still debated whether communal washing was considered social time or tolerated misery. Some records suggest singing and camaraderie. Others describe it as a mandatory penance performed weekly. Possibly both, possibly neither. By the time you reach home, the laundry line is already full of your mother-in-law's underthings. You drape your own wet garments nearby, hoping the wind won't reveal too much about your stitching. Inside, Walter is sharpening tools. He looks up and smiles. You give him the faintest nod, then you sit. Just sit. For a moment, the world is quiet. Then, someone knocks on the door. It's the priest's boy. A message. The lady of the manor has summoned you. Of course she has. You look at your fingers pruned, sore. You grab your shoes, a shawl, and the faintest sense of curiosity. Asterisk, the manor house rises out of the landscape, like it's not entirely. Sure, it belongs there. It's too large for this village. Too many rooms, too many windows, too much glass which you suspect exists solely to remind the peasants that they don't have any. You walk through the gate, past the tethered horses, with their smug, well-brushed faces, and up the stone path. A servant meets you at the door. She's younger than you, cleaner than you, and frowns more than necessary. This way, she says, like it's a test. You follow her into a hall that smells of beeswax and superiority. Tapestries hang on the walls, each one depicting a lion, doing something regal, fighting, roaring, possibly judging your hemline. You're brought to a small room near the solar. It's bright, warm, and contains a woman dressed in what can only be described as fabric wealth. Her sleeves are unnecessarily long. Her hair is plaited into a crown that says, "I've never touched a turnip in my life." She greets you with the kind of smile that has edges. "Marjorie," she says. "You are now Marjorie." "That's fine. I've heard you do fine needlework," she continues, "and I need someone discreet." You nod, always nod, never speak first. She produces a gown. It's silk. Real silk, imported, possibly illegal, possibly obtained through extremely unsaintly channels. It needs mending. You take it gently. You pretend you're not terrified of tearing it with your peasant hands. Major historical fact, in the medieval period, silk was among the most prized fabrics, often imported from the East via complex trade routes, and usually reserved for nobility or clergy. Possessing or wearing it without status could be a punishable offense. As you examine the hem, you spot the damaged small, almost invisible tears, likely from dancing or escaping through a hedge in an act of petty rebellion. You wonder what secrets this dress holds. You don't ask. The lady hands you a pouch of coins. Actual coins. Not moldy cheese, not barley. You blink. "Have it ready by Sunday," she says, "and tell no one." You nod again. Still nodding. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some noble women in medieval Europe had secret wardrobes sewn into their gowns. Small hidden pockets for messages, rosaries, or, occasionally, illicit snacks. You leave the manor with the gown in your arms, and the sudden weight of wealth you can't spend without drawing attention. On the road home, a passing monk sneezes and blesses himself at the same time. You murmur "bless you" out of habit. He nods like you passed a test. Back in the cottage, you lay the gown on your cot like a relic. Walter peeks in, sees the silk, and raises his eyebrows. You shrug. You work by candlelight. Tiny stitches, gentle threading. The fabric is delicate and wholly unfamiliar. It smells faintly of perfume and expensive secrets. Outside, the moon is bright. A dog howls, then realizes it's alone and stops. You pause to stretch your back. Your neck cracks. You're half proud, half concerned. Scholarly uncertainty. We don't fully know how many lower-class women engaged in clandestine tailoring for the nobility, but scraps of high-born fabric have been found in peasant households, suggesting a quiet web of skilled labor that crossed class lines. You finish the last stitch. You run your fingers over the seam. It's perfect. No one will know it was ever torn. You sit back, the candle is low, and for a moment, in the soft hush of the cottage, you feel something small but solid. You did something right today, and it will carry you through tomorrow. The sun rises late today. Maybe it's shy. Maybe the clouds got there first. Maybe time simply moves differently when your back aches and your knees crack like kindling. Either way, you're up before it again. Walter is whistling while chopping wood. You wonder briefly who taught him how to whistle, and if they regret it. The rhythm is off, but he's trying, and that's more than most men in this century. You make pottage for breakfast. Yesterday's lentils meet today's onions, a little salt, a bay leaf if you're lucky. You stir it slowly while watching. The steam rise like a ghost with nowhere better to be. There's a knock at the door. It's not the priest. It's not the boy from the manor. It's not even the goat who sometimes forgets which cottage she belongs to. It's Alice from the river, the one who thought she saw a dog with two tails. Come, she says. No pleasantries, just the word. Like a command and a comfort. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders. Your breath clouds in the cold dot. Today is birthday, not yours. Another girl, not much younger than you, is in labor. Her name is Goda, or Hilda, or something equally old-sounding. You've never spoken, but in this village, you show up anyway. You enter the cottage, and the air hits you like a furnace. The fire roars. Herbs hang from the ceiling sage, mugwort, and something that smells like feet but keeps the devils out. Supposedly, the midwife is already there, sleeves rolled, hands washed, brow tight with focus. You kneel beside the fire and start boiling water. Major historical fact. Childbirth in medieval times was exclusively a female domain, typically overseen by midwives and neighbors. Men were barred from the room. Even priests waited outside. Godor may be Hilda's screaming. She sounds like she's trying to expel both the baby and the memory of whoever put it there. You avoid looking too closely. Instead, you grind more herbs, crush more cloths, and pray under your breath to Saint Margaret of Antioch, patron of childbirth, and, coincidentally, dragon escapes. The air is thick with sweat, smoke, and anxious whispers. Then the baby arrives, red, loud, wrinkled. It cries like it's already had enough of this world, which is fair. The women sigh as one. You smile. Obscure tidbit. Some medieval women believed that placing a slice of toasted bread under the birthing bed would absorb Penand could be buried. Later, to seal the labor away from evil spirits. You glance under the bed. Sure enough, there's the toast. Someone thought of everything. The midwife announces it's a girl. The room is silent for a beat too long. Then someone claps softly. Someone else murmurs, still a blessing. You take the baby to the fire. Her fingers grip yours, tiny, powerful. A new creature in a world that doesn't always know what to do with girls. You swaddle her with practiced hands. Outside, the sun has finally decided to show itself. You step out to let the mother rest. A chicken crosses your path with the casual arrogance of someone who's survived 3 feasts. Scholarly uncertainty. Historians still debate the exact training of medieval midwives. Some were licensed, many were not. Some used formal herbal remedies, others relied on charms, whispers, and very aggressive prayers. You walk back home, the echo of the newborn's cry tucked into your ears. At your doorstep, Walter hands you a cup of warm cider. You don't ask why, you just sip and feel the day slow down, and tomorrow, maybe someone else will be born. Asterisk, you're woken before dawn by bells, not church bells, cowbells. The livestock are out again. You open the door to find the neighbors. Cow standing squarely in your vegetable patch, chewing contemplatively on a head of cabbage that never got the chance to be impressive. The cow blinks at you, UMBOTHERED. You blink back. Eventually, Walter coaxes it away with a turnip and a very slow clap. The cow moves like royalty. You kneel beside the flattened cabbage bed. There goes dinner. You were going to stew it with salt, maybe onion, maybe even a carrot if you felt fancy. Not anymore, so instead, you do what any reasonable medieval woman would do when faced with hunger, uncertainty, and emotional fatigue. You make bread, well, sort of. The flour is coarse. The yeast is hope. You knead it with strong hands and stronger patience. The dough fights back, but eventually yields. You cover it with cloth and wait. Major historical fact: bread was the cornerstone of the medieval diet. For peasants, it was often made of rye, barley, or even pea flour, and baked in communal ovens when they worked. While the dough rises, you patch a hole in your apron. You hum softly, the same tune your mother hummed, and her mother, probably. Something with no name, just a melody that clings to bone. The house smells of yeast and effort. Outside, a cart rattles past. You hear shouting, someone's lost a pig. Again, possibly the same pig from the puppet show. A local celebrity. You check on the dough. It's risen unevenly, like your expectations. You form it into a round loaf, score it with a dull knife, and slide it into the hearth oven. Obscure tidbit. Some households marked their loaves with unique symbols to prevent theft at communal ovens. A crescent, a cross, a crude face, medieval branding. Essentially, you use a star. Because why not? While the bread bakes, you clean. The cottage is small, but somehow always full of dust and regret. You sweep the corners. You find a dead beetle, 3 lost buttons, and a scrap of parchment with a prayer scrawled in an unfamiliar hand. You keep the prayer. You throw out the beetle. Walter returns, hands blackened with soot, face pink from the forge heat. He smells like metal and something vaguely flammable. He eyes the bread. Smells like feast day, he says. You smile. It does. Scholarly uncertainty. Historians disagree on how often peasant families actually baked their own bread versus relying on larger village ovens. Some suggest it was a rare treat. Others believe it was weekly ritual, like church, but tastier. The bread is done. You tap the bottom, it thuds just right. You tear it open, steam rises. The inside is soft. You eat it slowly, with salted butter and a silence that feels earned. Outside, the cow is back. You let her eat the rest of the cabbage. It's been a good day. Asterisk, it's raining, not the dramatic, thunderclap kind. This is the slow, pitiful drizzle that seeps into your bones and whispers, you'll never be dry again. You've layered your shawl over your head like a makeshift tent, and your shoes squelch with each step as you trudge toward the chapel for Saint's Day. Mass. Walter grumbles behind you. He's not exactly pious, but his mother is, and today she's wielding guilt like a battle axe. You suspect God himself gets nervous around her. The chapel is small, old, and smells permanently of damp stone and incense. Inside, the candles flicker, like they're trying to escape. A sheep has wandered in Eganand. No one seems inclined to remove it. It settles near the altar and promptly falls asleep. Sensible creature, you sit in the back pew, which is more a plank than a bench. The priest begins in Latin. You catch about every seventh word, most of them ominous. Major historical fact: church services in medieval Europe were conducted entirely in Latin until the Reformation. Most lay people didn't understand the words, they just followed the gestures and hoped for the best. You watch as the congregation goes through the motions. Kneel, stand, cross, murmur. You do your best to keep up. A toddler chews on a rosary nearby like it owes him money. The priest drones on about Saint Modwenna, a pious virgin who lived on barley and cold water and once healed a blind pig. Or maybe that was Saint Mildred. You're not sure. You're distracted by the water slowly creeping up your left boot. Obscure tidbit: some medieval saints became associated with animals like pigs, geese, or bees based on vague miracles or convenient symbolism. These animals often ended up depicted at their feet in stained glass windows, looking mildly confused. Walter sneezes. It echoes. The priest glares. You pretend not to know him. Halfway through, a thunderous crack sounds outside. Not thunder. Old Thomlin's cart tipping over again. He should really retire. Mass concludes with the ringing of a bell that sounds suspiciously like someone banging a spoon against a pot. The congregation files out into the drizzle, muttering blessings and gossip in equal measure. You stay behind a moment, watching the sheep. Scholarly uncertainty. Some historians argue that sheep in churches were common due to poor boundaries and shared village spaces. Others think their presence was symbolic, representing the flock. It's possible the sheep just enjoyed the acoustics. You return home wet, mildly cleansed, and spiritually neutral. You hang your shawl by the hearth. Walter pokes at the fire, pretending it's not his turn to cook. You close your eyes for a moment. The sound of rain against the thatch is soft and steady. Outside, the sheep has followed you. You let it in. You wake to singing, high, thin, and tuneless, the sound of someone trying to remember a melody while beating laundry against a stone. It's the neighbor girl, Tiba. She's 8, feral, and possibly raised by squirrels, but she sings like the whole village is listening. You smile and then wince. Your back still hasn't forgiven you for childbirth duty 3 days ago. You stretch slowly, then stand. The cottage smells of ashes, hay, and yesterday's soup. You open the shutter, just a crack. Mist rolls over the fields like it owns the place. Walter is gone. No surprise. The forge keeps him busy, and you suspect he prefers hammers to conversation. Today is mending day. You gather the worn garments in a basket socks with more holes than thread. A tunic with a mysterious stain, a sleeve that may or may not belong. To you, you settle near the hearth, needle in hand, thread between your lips, like a knight preparing for battle. Major historical fact: clothing in the medieval period was expensive and time-consuming to make. Most peasants owned only a few garments and mended them frequently, sometimes for years beyond their original usefulness. You sew in silence. The thread slips through fabric like it remembers the path from last time. You've patched this sleeve before, and the knee, and the shoulder. This tunic is more memory than cloth. The door creaks open. It's Tibba. She's holding a frog. Is this cursed? She asks. You take it gently. It blinks. It smells like pond and optimism. Probably not, you say. She nods, accepts your answer, and runs off barefoot through the mud. Obscure tidbit: some medieval children believed frogs carried secrets or curses and kept them as pets, charms, or warnings. There were even folk rhymes about whispering your wishes into a frog and setting it free. You release the frog near the woodpile. It hops once, then vanishes. Back inside, the mending continues. The rhythm is meditative. You hum softly something old and wordless. The candle burns low. Your eyes sting. Walter returns around noon, holding a cracked bowl and the look of a man who's just discovered his lunch is missing. It exploded, he says. You look at the bowl, fair enough. You say. He shrugs. You split an apple and a piece of cheese. It tastes sharper than usual. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe it's aging with attitude. You finish the mending just as the sky darkens again. A summer storm, the kind that arrives dramatically and leaves without apology. You close the shutters, stoke the fire, and light the candle. Scholarly uncertainty. Some scholars suggest that mending clothes became a form of passive resistance among medieval women, way to stretch limited resources and quietly assert domestic power. Others believe it was simply survival with better stitching. You hold up the finished tunic. It's clean, whole, nearly new in the candlelight outside. The frog croaks once. You smile, and tomorrow you'll begin something else. Asterisk, the rooster is late. You'd like to believe it's a quiet act of rebellion on his part, or perhaps even poultry. Burnout. Either way, you enjoy the extra silence. The air is heavy with the scent of cut hay, and someone nearby boiling bones for broth. It's not unpleasant, just medieval. Today is the feast of Saint Etheldreda, which means three things. The priest is polishing his sermons. The cook is already panicking, and someone's goat will eat the altar flowers. It happens every year. You've been summoned to help at the manor again. The lady wants garlands. For a sense of heavenly festivity, she says, as though God personally requested daisies. You tie your hair back, wrap your shawl tight, and walk the path up to the manor with a basket slung over your arm. It holds scissors, twine, and about. 4 hours of unspoken expectations. The meadows are thick with wildflowers. Yellow, white, purple, buzzing faintly with bees who couldn't care less about Etheldreda. You cut the flowers carefully, no stems too short, no petals too limp. The garlands must look effortless, which of course means effort. Major historical fact: feast days in medieval villages were often the only breaks from routine labor. They marked saints' lives, harvests, or significant church dates, and usually involved food, music, processions, and elaborate decorations for the altar. You return to the manor with your haul. The lady greets you with a polite nod, then turns back to scolding the scullery maid for overcooking a parsnip. The maid blinks, slowly, probably imagining a better life as a turnip. You get to work. Twisting the flowers into garlands is peaceful. Your hands move quickly, muscle memory doing its work. You hum quietly. The daisies listen. A small boy enters. He's barefoot, covered in flour, and holding a wooden spoon like a scepter. "Are you the flower witch?" he asks. "Yes, you." Reply without looking up, but only on Wednesdays. He nods solemnly and departs. You may have accidentally started a new local legend, obscure tidbit. In some medieval regions, unmarried women were believed to be better at weaving flower crowns because they were untangled by sin. This likely says more about the men who made the rule than the women it excluded. Once the garlands are complete, you drape them along the altar. The priest arrives, sniffs, and mutters that it's a bit fragrant. You tell him it's saintly. He grumbles, but says nothing else. The goat appears, as predicted. It eyes the daisies. You move the altar cloth just in time. You head home as the sun dips low. Your arms sore from weaving, your back sore from everything else. Walter is at the door, holding a splinter in one hand and a look of confusion in the other. "Bench bit." "Me," he says. You don't ask. You remove the splinter and offer him some cold cider. He takes it like a man who's fought harder battles than furniture. Scholarly uncertainty. Some historians claim garland making was a highly gendered and symbolic ritual. Others think it was simply the medieval version of being told to decorate for a party and make it look effortless. You lay down near the hearth, breathing in the fading scent of wildflowers and goat deterrent. Tomorrow the garlands will wilt, but tonight they glow in your memory, delicate, useless, and beautiful. Asterisk, you wake up with straw in your hair. There's no reason for this. You didn't sleep in straw, but the medieval world has its own logic, and sometimes that logic includes waking up with nature in your hair. You sigh, brush it out, and stretch until your shoulders pop like old hinges. Today is tax day. You knew it was coming. You just hoped ignoring it would make it go away. It hasn't. The reeve is making his rounds, collecting dues for the manor. Barley, eggs, wool, whatever, your household pledged months ago when everything felt more plentiful. You bundle your contributions into a basket. It's modest. Half a sack of grain, a few eggs, and a length of wool that you spun while hoping no one would notice how thin it turned out. Walter offers to go in your place, but he's got forge burns and a complicated relationship with authority. You kiss his cheek and go yourself. The reeve is in the village square, perched on a stool like a crow on a fence post. He has a tally book, a quill, and the eternal expression of someone who hasn't laughed since Pentecost. "Marjorie," he says, squinting at his list. You nod and place your goods before him, like an offering to a particularly unimpressed deity. Major historical fact. Medieval peasants were required to pay taxes in kind, meaning goods, not money. These dues went to the local lord, the church, and occasionally traveling officials who claimed to be sent by the crown. Spoiler, some weren't. The reeve pokes at your wool, frowns, pokes again. You briefly consider stabbing him with his own quill. Then he nods and waves you off. You leave quickly. A small crowd has gathered near the well. Someone's singing a ballad about a knight who married a fish. You don't ask. Folk songs have their own rules. Obscure tidbit, in some English villages, tax records were kept on long sticks called tallies. These were split down the middle, one half for the collector, the other for the payer. If the two halves matched later, the record was valid. Medieval data encryption, essentially. Back at home, Walter is hammering something circular. You ask what it is. Wheel hub. For what wheel? He shrugs. You spend the afternoon carding wool. The motion is repetitive pull, comb, fluff. It softens your thoughts. You think about the baby born last week, about the sheep in the chapel, about the frog. It was a good frog. Walter asks if you want to walk by the river before dusk. You nod. The basket can wait. The sky is pink and pale blue, like an overripe peach. The river is quiet today. Even the geese are asleep, their beaks tucked under their wings like they've finally run out of opinions. Scholarly uncertainty. Some scholars argue that tax day brought community togetherness, shared burdens, gossip, mutual suffering. Others say it simply reminded everyone how unequal the system was. Both can be true. You skip a stone, it hops once, then sinks. Walter tries, misses, and blames the stone. You laugh real, deep, surprising even yourself. And when the sun slips, behind the trees, you walk home hand in hand. The taxes are paid. The geese are quiet. And for a little while, the world feels balanced. Your finger hurts, specifically the tip. A tiny stab from yesterday's wool carding. Barely visible, but somehow wielding disproportionate power. It's throbbing like it's trying to become its own person. You ignore it. There's stew to stir, and a floor to sweep, and you're already behind. Though behind is a relative term, there's no clock here, just the sun and whether or not the rooster is having an identity crisis again. Walter is trying to fix the fence, not the big one, the little one that separates your garden from the neighbor's very judgmental goat. So far, he's repaired it 4 times. The goat has escaped 5. You ladle breakfast-thin stew. Thicker bread and eat standing by the hearth, watching the embers do their best impersonation of being alive. The warmth brushes your shins, and for a brief moment, the day feels manageable. Then, the shouting starts. You step outside. At the center of the village, there's a crowd. Not a festival crowd. A something's happened crowd. You weave your way through, basket abandoned. Apron flapping, at the middle of it all is the traveling friar. He comes twice a year, preaches in rhyming couplets, and sells indulgences from a little chest he carries like a very righteous lunchbox. Today, however, he's waving a scroll. Relic, he announces, from the Holy Land. He holds it aloft. It looks like a bone, or possibly just a bit of wood. Major historical fact, in the medieval world, religious relics, bones of saints, pieces of the true cross, thorns from the crown were highly prized. Pilgrims traveled hundreds of miles to see them, and towns competed to house the most miraculous collection, the villagers murmur. Old Thomlin crosses himself 3 times. A child sneezes directly onto the relic. The friar doesn't notice. You sidle closer. The bone has a suspiciously clean break, and someone's tried to stain it with berry juice. The friar declares it can cure back pain, rheumatism, and unspecified female maladies. Obscure tidbit. In some regions, specific relics were believed to increase fertility if kissed under moonlight, though no one agreed on which relic or which moonlight. Possibly a marketing tactic. The priest appears. He and the friar have an animated theological discussion involving many raised eyebrows and one poorly disguised eye roll. Eventually, the crowd disperses. The relic remains on a cloth, displayed near the chapel like a misunderstood art exhibit. You return home to find the goat inside your kitchen. She's chewing on your herb shelf. Walter shrugs. Fence didn't work. You nod. It never does. Scholarly uncertainty. Many modern historians believe a large portion of medieval relics were forgeries. Some even suggest there were multiple left index fingers of the same saint traveling across Europe. Yet, they were deeply meaningful to those who believed. You light the fire again, restore the herbs as best you can, and set a pot to boil. Outside, the friar is singing. It's off-key, but earnest. The goat burps. You open the door and let her. Stay. Asterisk. The sky is the color of pewter this morning. Everything feels hushed. Even the chickens are subdued, as though the world is holding its breath. You bundle up tightly before heading out today. You're going to the woods. Not alone, of course. No one goes into the woods alone. That's where you get eaten, bewitched, or worse, stung by wasps. You're with Alice, and she's brought her foraging basket, 2 knives, and a running commentary on who's secretly marrying whom. None of it's confirmed, all of it's fascinating. The forest is damp. Soft earth muffles your steps. Above, birds flutter in secret conversations. The trees sway gently, creaking like they've seen too much. You're here for mushrooms, and moss dot, and maybe a quiet moment or two. Major historical fact: medieval peasants relied heavily on foraging to supplement their diet. Mushrooms, berries, wild herbs all were gathered seasonally and used in stews, medicines, or traded for goods. You find a patch of mushrooms, small, pale, delicate. You hesitate. Alice nods. Not the death kind. Helpful. You gather carefully, brushing dirt from the stems. Nearby, you spot early wild garlic and a cluster of sorrel. Into the basket they go. Further in, the trees part slightly, revealing a shallow stream. You kneel, fill your flask, and breathe deeply. The air here smells like wet bark and old secrets. Obscure tidbit. In some areas, women carried charms or carved wooden spoons into the forest, believing they could protect them from mischievous woodland spirits. The spoons often bore symbols, spirals, or the occasional doodled sheep. You carry a spoon. Yours has a heart and something that may be a frog. You're not sure. Walter carved it while half asleep. Alice tells a story about a local girl who got lost in the woods and married a tree spirit. No one's seen her since, but her bread recipe survives. You nod solemnly. You both snack on dry rye biscuits near a fallen log. They taste like wood and suffering. You smile anyway. As the sky darkens, you head back. The village feels different after time in the woods, busier, louder, more urgent. Or maybe it's just the sound of someone yelling about the goat again. Scholarly uncertainty. Some believe foraging trips were a rare moment of freedom for medieval women, a place to talk, laugh, or simply breathe without being watched. Others argue they were just more unpaid labor. Likely both. At home, you sort your haul mushrooms into a stew pot, herbs into bundles, moss for the damp corner by the hearth. Walter holds up the carved spoon. Did it work? You consider. I'm still alive. He grins. Good spoon. You hang it by the door. And as night settles over the village, the forest seems to lean in, quiet and curious. But you're safe now, and full, and just a little closer to the earth. Asterisk. There's a pig in the path again. You stand, basket in hand, and stare. At it, it stares back, chewing with the kind of calm found only in creatures that know no shame. You step left, it steps left. You step right, it doesn't move. Eventually, it lies down with a sigh like it owns the road and possibly your entire social life. You go around. Today's your turn at the spinning hall, which sounds grand, but it's really just the back room of the baker's cousin's cottage, filled with wheels, yarn, and women with strong opinions about everything. The room smells like wool, sweat, and something slightly burnt. Someone's brought leftover barley cakes. They taste like regret, but they're warm. You settle at your wheel. The rhythm begins. Foot, pull, twist. Foot, pull, twist. Your fingers know the dance before your mind catches up. Major historical fact: spinning was one of the most important domestic tasks for medieval women. Producing thread and yarn for clothing, blankets, and even fishing nets. It was time-consuming, skill-heavy, and absolutely endless. Across from you, Mera is talking about her cousin's daughter's wedding night. It was not ideal. The phrase "weeping in a hayloft" is used more than once. Someone makes a joke about Saint Agnes and her vow of chastity. Everyone laughs too hard. You twist your thread tighter. Obscure tidbit. It was believed in some parts of medieval Europe that a girl who spun flawless thread without breaking it would be guaranteed a smooth childbirth. This may explain the deep concentration on every single woman's face. The sun rises higher. A baby cries somewhere. Someone spills, die. You keep spinning, your arms ache, but the thread is smooth, consistent, almost golden in the light. You smile, Mera. Asks what you'll do with your finished yarn. Trade it, you say. For what? You think for a moment. Something soft. Everyone nods. That's reason enough. At noon, you take a break and sit near the doorway. The breeze drifts in, carrying dust and the scent of the baker's midday loaves. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine owning a bed with a mattress that doesn't sound like a crumpled harvest. Scholarly uncertainty. Some scholars suggest spinning circles served as informal village councils, places where women exchanged not just labor, but news, support, and community rules. Others argue they were mostly quiet, meditative spaces. They were probably both, depending on the day and the gossip. By sunset, your basket is full of spools, your arms are full of soreness, and your ears are full of stories you're not supposed to repeat. You walk home slowly. The pig is gone. You miss it, a little. Walter's at the hearth, mending the shoe you tripped in last week. He looks up, smiles, and doesn't comment on the wool in your hair. You sit together in silence, and tomorrow there will be more thread. There's a wedding, not yours, mercifully. It's the baker's niece 16, anxious and already regretting her choice of veil. You help pin it in place, gently coaxing it over her shoulders as she mutters about St. Catherine and how no one told her the groom had that many teeth. You offer her a sprig of lavender. She sniffs it, sneezes, thanks you anyway. The village gathers. Weddings here are public affairs, whether invited or not. Half the crowd just wants free cider. The other half wants to see if anyone objects. A few just like dancing badly and blaming it on divine joy. Major historical fact. In medieval villages, marriage was as much a social contract as a romantic one. Couples often declared their vows in front of witnesses, sometimes at the church door, and were considered legally married by mutual consent. Long before any priest got involved, the priest drones through the service, occasionally swatting flies. The groom looks sweaty but hopeful. The bride looks like she's memorizing the location of every escape route. You join the crowd outside for the feast. Bread, cheese, boiled greens, and something that may have once been a chicken. Someone's brought a lute. It's out of tune. Perfectly so. Children race around. tripping over dogs. The air smells like spilled cider, roasted barley, and ambition. You chat with neighbors you only see at events like these. The woman who keeps bees. The boy who swears his cow talks to him in dreams. A man with a patch over one eye who insists. He used to be a sailor, despite living 50 miles from the sea. Obscure tidbit. In some traditions, newlyweds had to jump over a broom, a fire, or a hayfork, depending on local custom. In one corner of Wales, it was considered good luck if the bride tripped over her own shoes. Very good luck if she didn't cry. The music picks up. You dance once, cautiously, then sit. Your knees remind you you're not 16 anymore, or 20, or, let's say, flexible. The bride eventually relaxes. The groom says something that makes her laugh. People cheer. Someone hiccups loudly. Walter appears with a plate of something warm and slightly alarming. "Try this," he says. You do. It's edible. Scholarly uncertainty. Some believe peasant weddings were wild, raucous events, lasting several days. Others argue they were modest affairs with little time for festivity. Records conflictly because the literate people weren't invited to the fun parts. By twilight, the torches are lit. Fireflies join the dancing. The bride's veil is askew. The groom's tunic is stained with joy, or ale, or both. You walk. Home with Walter, your steps slow, full, and slightly crooked from the cider. I tripped over the broom. You say good luck, then, he replies. The night is soft, and, for once, nobody dreads what comes next. Asterisk, you dreamt of bread again. Warm, round, crisp at the edges. It smelled like safety and comfort and a time before chores had names. You reach for it. Just as the dream blurs and folds into the morning light, there's a soft knocking on the door. You answer it with the same expression you use for unexpected guests and overly confident squirrels. Outside stands none. The older woman with more teeth than patience and a talent for appearing exactly when you have no time. Come, she says, just like Alice did. You don't argue. You grab your shawl, your dignity, and a half-eaten apple. You may need it. There's a wake today. Old Elfric passed last night. Peacefully, they say. In his chair, holding a cat and muttering about taxes. Major historical fact. Medieval wakes were common in Christian Europe, especially before funerals. Friends and neighbors would gather to pray, keep watch over the body, and share food, drink, and stories. It was part grief, part celebration, part sleep-deprived social hour at the cottage. Elfric lies still beneath a homespun cloth, his hands folded, his shoes polished, something no one thought possible. Around him, the room is filled with people who claim to have liked him more than they did. You take a seat by the hearth. Someone hands you a bowl of broth. It's bland but warm. You sip it slowly. Walter arrives late. Elfric owed him a hammer. He doesn't say this out loud, but you know. People murmur stories. Some are true. Others are creative efforts. He once chased a fox across 4 fields. He spoke 7 languages, mostly curses. He never bathed on St. Cuthbert's. They said it was unlucky. Obscure tidbit. In some rural traditions, a bowl of salt was placed on the chest of the dead to ward off spirits. In others, mirrors were covered so the soul wouldn't get trapped. In one French village, they once buried a man with a spoon, just in case. You help serve food. Simple things: bread, cheese, stewed apples. A girl sings softly. Her voice is thin, like a reed in wind, but it carries dots, settles. The priest arrives to give last rites. He's solemn, tired, and has hay in his sleeve. No one mentions it. You step outside for air. The sky is that deep blue that only comes after a heavy day. Stars peek out shyly, like they're checking the guest list. Walter joins you, do you think? Elfric's in heaven, you shrug. If he is, he's probably trying to rearrange the furniture. Walter chuckles. It sounds like a wheel turning after too long stuck, scholarly, uncertainty. Some scholars believe the concept of good death in medieval Europe meant dying at home, surrounded by family, having confessed and been blessed. Others argue peasants rarely had that luxury, and peaceful endings were more folklore than fact. You walk home in silence. There's soup still warm in the pot, and a crust of bread you'd nearly forgotten. You eat slowly, reverently, and then, like Elfric, you sit by the fire, not speaking, not moving, just resting. Asterisk, the fire is low now. Its embers crackle like soft whispers, fading slowly into the quiet of evening. The cottage around you seems to breathe, wood settling, wind brushing against the walls, time loosening its grip. The day has folded itself gently into the past. Outside, the village sleeps. Chickens roost. Dogs sigh in their sleep. The sheep yes. Even the chapel sheep lie curled in moonlight, dreamless and still. You lean back. The air is cool against your skin, but the warmth of the hearth lingers. You feel it in your fingertips, in the backs of your knees, in the soft weight of your shawl around your shoulders. You are not hurrying. You are not being asked to fix, to feed, to fetch, or to forgive. You are simply here. The candle burns lower. Its flame dances once, twice, then stills. Shadows stretch across the ceiling like long-forgotten lullabies, dot in the corner. Your basket rests half-mended. Tomorrow will come, with its spinning and its noise and its goats. But not now. Now there is only breath, soft and slow. There is only the steady beat of your heart. There is only the hush of wind against thatched roofs. There is only the soft, old hum of a world turning gently beneath your feet. You close your eyes. The stories of the day settle into your bones, quiet and full. The dreams come not with sound, but with scent of fresh bread, warm moss, cool water. You do not need to understand it all. You do not need to fix the fence, or chase the pig, or spin the thread just right. You only need to rest. And so, in this quiet little corner of a world long gone, you sleep and sleep and sleep.